Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 21. And this is an episode that we've been all waiting for, the confrontation in full between Deku and Lady Nagant. And let me just say that this episode does not disappoint. So let's dive right into the breakdown and talk more about this episode. For starters, the title of this episode, The Lovely Lady Nagant, actually comes from the manga chapter of Manga Chapter 314, as this episode actually covers manga chapters 313 to 316. However, we only cover pages 1 through 11 in chapter 316. And the episode actually starts off with new information that was in the manga, where we get to see that All Might was able to survive the attack on his car as he's attacked by two random thugs. And these thugs do know who All Might is, and they think to themselves that All Might is dead and he has been killed and that they can take him on. However, we get the animated scene of intimidating All Might from the manga, and it's done amazingly in this episode and really can put the fear inside of the watchers if you look at it too long. And the impact of this scene is heavily improved upon by the animation in the moment and the sound design in this episode. And jumping over the intro, the episode proper starts with some amazing animation and choreography from Deku, as we see that he's jumping around and over the buildings, running across them in very dynamic and well animated shots. And we see how the movements are very fluid in this scene as well. And this animation is not going to be unique in this episode, because there is a whole bunch of well animated scenes that I may not get to all of them, but I will point out some of my favorites as well as some of the best animated ones. Because in this episode, even the gunfire coming from Nagant's weapon looks amazing as we see Deku begin an attempt to dodge them, even if he's unsuccessful in doing so. And from here, Deku begins to realize as well as analyze the situation that he is in, and he begins to figure out how Lady Nagant is getting the jump on him. And I really love the portrayal of this scene and how Deku is using strategy from the manga, and how we're able to see it actually animated in the anime in a very similar way as someone would use strategy on an actual strategic map. And from this moment, we actually get an added scene that uses a flashback sequence from last episode to convey some new information about how All For One actually gave Lady Nagant this quirk, which Deku later confirms later on in this exact same moment. And then from here, I will say that among all of the great animation in this episode, we do have this one scene where the animation seems to be at its weakest, where it seems to have very little impact when it comes to when Lady Nagant is firing her gun in comparison to the manga, which looks a little bit more impactful and dynamic. But this is just the outlier, because there's more great animation to come. But this is where Deku gets a little bit more serious, and he actually uses smokescreen with full force to cover the entire area in smoke. And we also get to see that In is able to interact with Deku in this state, and this is something that I really like that both the manga and anime do with the vestiges. But we also see that Deku is actually beginning to prepare for a brand new quirk that is actually revealed in this episode. And from what we're going to be learning later, what he's doing is actually charging up the quirk itself by bending his knees and jumping back up and forth as a way to charge up the quirk, which is going to be revealed to be the third user's quirk, which is very apparent because of the fact that he appears in this moment as well. And as the third user somewhat chastises Deku about using this quirk, even though Deku knows that he may not be able to use it properly, Deku is determined to use this quirk as a way to stop Lady Nagant, where the quirk is finally revealed. And there is something that is new about the quirk in the anime that is not necessarily in the manga. For instance, in the anime, Fajin, which is the new quirk that Deku is using in this moment, is colored in a red tint, very much the same color as the third user of One For All. This is different from the manga, where it doesn't appear to be anything that is physically altering Deku's body in a color form, so we get it revealed here, but we do not get an explanation of it until later on. But something else that I want to point out is that just this entire scene of Deku using Fajin is actually animated very well when it comes to it finally activating for the first time. And this is when Deku's plan begins to come into play, because he uses some decoys that were able to distract Lady Nagant long enough for him to capture her going into a nearby building. and how this entire sequence that we see of Deku grabbing onto Lady Nagant is actually something that is completely absent in the manga chapter that this is based on. But in the volume 32 extras, we actually get to see what Deku actually did to capture Lady Nagant from the building, and what was in the manga extras at that time is actually animated in this episode in a really cool way. And even though Deku was able to capture her for a moment, she was still able to slip away using her sniper rifle to knock him back. And this is where we're beginning to learn a little bit more information about Lady Nagant's backstory when it comes to her relationship with the Hero Public Safety Commission. And how something I want to add is that I really do enjoy how Deku gets farther and farther away from her after he gets knocked back and dodges a bullet. We actually hear him actually get farther and farther away, and that it's done through him getting quieter and quieter. So this was not something necessary that the anime had to do, but I'm very glad that they did it because it adds a little bit of depth to the fight, and that they are fighting from longer distances and farther away, which is added to the idea that many times when Lady Nagant shoots off her bullet, she actually shoots off a microphone alongside of it so that she can still communicate and talk with Deku even though they are far away. And so as the fight continues, we do get to see Deku fighting against Lady Nagant, as we get to see a lot of well done animation of him dodging the bullets, but we do also have a part of the episode that is technically in the manga but is changed slightly. Because in the manga, we have the third user talking to Deku as a sort of flashback about what Deku is able to do using the quirks of One for All. However, in the anime, it is shown as the entirety of One for All, and those who have quirks actually telling him and demonstrating them. So it's a slight change, but I do enjoy it nonetheless. But from there, we also get a little bit more information about the Hero Public Safety Commission and what they were able to do behind closed doors. We get to hear Lady Nagant talk about the horrible stuff that they did behind the scenes, which includes doing some dirty stuff, such as the killing of people preemptively before an actual crime has been committed, and how many of these people never were able to see the light of the law be shined upon them. Where we get to learn about her talking about how Hero Society is founded on the trust between heroes and the civilians, and how many characters that were seen as just vigilantes became heroes because of this trust. However, we do get a change in the anime from the manga when it comes to one particular scene of the group of heroes, where we get to see one of the top 10 former heroes, Musha, being portrayed in this light or in this image in a negative fashion in both the anime and the manga. However, the manga does include an image of Red Riot. And I think that the anime removed him from the scene because the scene is supposed to imply that these heroes on the screen were not necessarily doing it for the best of reasons. And this ties into more information that we learned about Lady Nagant and how she killed heroes that were abusing the system. And how we just explicitly see her kill a dude that has not committed a crime yet, as well as killing multiple people with actual headshot kills. And this is done just as explicitly in the manga as we see in the anime. And her speech is punctuated by the fact that she is responsible for the death of the former chairman of the Hero Public Safety Commission. And this is very interesting because it ties into a change in the dialogue from the anime in comparison to the manga. Where in the manga, Deku just brings up that he believed that Lady Nagant was sent to jail because she killed 2 fellow heroes. However, in the anime, it does not bring up the reasoning why she went to jail. However, they do show an image of a newspaper, and Deku explains that it was actually revealed that he was killed by a hero during a skirmish or dispute. So when it comes to this change, it actually makes sense in both contexts because this is not something that you could just hide from the public. You can't hide the fact that the head of the Hero Public Safety Commission was straight up murdered or killed. So either way, it still makes sense that this is information that Deku would know in both the manga and the anime. And we still have Lady Nagant still monologuing for the reasonings why she's here and the reasonings why she's working with all, as Deku is seen using a new move using the Black Whip called Fifth Pinpoint Focus. And as Deku is springing towards Lady Nagant, he begins to monologue himself as he comes to a realization that the world is not black and white, but is also just multiple shades of gray. And this speech really gets under Lady Nagant's skin to the point where she fires and aims a gun at Overhaul, attempting to kill him, as well as to test the resolve of Deku. Now, the real question is, How did Overhaul get up there if he was locked in a closet? This is an issue when it comes to the anime when it changes small things like this that may be seen later on as inconsistencies. However, simple logic of him breaking out of the closet or Lady Nagant going and unlocking him earlier can solve these issues and make so that they are not really that big of issues. But from that moment, we do get a slight flashback to really explain why Chisake is here, and he's going to be acting as an informant for Lady Nagant to pinpoint and locate who and where Deku is. And this is where we get a little bit of development from Chisake here and how he really wants to go and see the boss, and that is the reasoning why he's working alongside Lady Nagant. And as we are getting this information, we do get a reused scene from a scene prior from new dialogue coming from Chisake over it, but it's still a very well animated and well portrayed scene. But this is where we're beginning to reach the climax of this fight. Lady Nagant points her gun at Chisake to prove a point to Deku, but we see that this is where Deku begins to show why he is the hero that he is. Because this is where we get an explanation for what Fajin is, which is that he's able to store up energy or power in his body using kinetic movements and then release them in strong bursts. And we get to see this animation in play as it gets turned up from a 10 to an 11. Because this entire animation sequence really just shows how fast Deku is in comparison to the bullet, as he seems to be moving faster than the bullet as the bullet itself is moving steel. And from here we get to see Deku uses One For All 45%, Fajin, as well as the momentum and trajectory of Black Whip to perform a faux 100%. Which means that he's performing like a pseudo or a fake 100%, and the reasoning why it's fake is because he's not actually using the entirety of the 100% of One For All, but that he's trying to mimic it to the best of his abilities without hurting and breaking his body. And what is even amazing about this is that we get a small scene of just Lady Nagant being in shock and awe in a red tint, which is something that the anime really likes to do in this part of the season, and I'm really enjoying it. And this is where we get to the final attack of this fight, which is amazing due to the cool animation, the cool colors, as well as just the amazing direction in this moment, as we see Deku use faux 100% Manchester Smash, and the attack is animated so well, most likely because it was animated by Nakamura. And you can see the aesthetic in this scene is very much that of Nakamura by just the different colors as well as the after images of Deku's attack, as well as we get to see that it's not an instant thing and that there's a small delay to where Lady Nagant's arm breaks apart as she begins to fall. And as she begins to fall, we actually get to see a cool way that she's able to reflect on her past as she falls into the darkness. And how we see that she's able to be pulled out of the darkness later on in this symbolic moment by Deku. And something else that I want to point out is that we do get to see some reused images throughout the scene to really understand the progression of Lady Nagant's character and as being a progression through her life. But I want to point out the bald version of Lady Nagant, which is actually something that was once again in the My Hero Academia volume extras of volume 32 as sort of a pseudo concept design for what Lady Nagant could have or may have looked like in prison, because that just makes the logical sense. Her quirk is tied to her hair, so it makes sense that she should be bald in prison so she's unable to use it effectively, or really at all. So I really love how the anime is really taking from the volume extras and adding them to the anime to enhance the experience. But we're now approaching the end of the episode, because as Deku tries to save Lady Nagant, he begins to explain that she was not really bad at all and that she still has the heart of a hero. And that this touches Lady Nagant in a way right before it's revealed that All For One implanted a bomb inside of her that causes her to explode if she breaches their contract. And after this massive explosion that Lady Nagant may or may not have been able to survive, we see that she's about to hit the ground and potentially die, but is luckily enough saved by her replacement, aka Hawks. And we get to see Hawks begin to save Lady Nagant, but unfortunately he is unable to do so on his own. However, he is still able to give a speech that is able to convince Lady Nagant to reveal some very important information to them by pretty much showing that she is by pretty much echoing everything that Deku has said to her, but doing it from the perspective of someone that can relate to her more. And as the speech with Hawks gets to Lady Nagant and she begins to reflect on everything that has come to this moment, she actually reveals the information to the heroes on where she was supposed to deliver DEKU, when, and how it was going to go down. However, there is some cut information and a cut panel from the manga, from the anime, that may be reintroduced in the next episode when it comes to All For One's involvement with other assassins. But once the speech has ended and both heroes are on the ground safely, we do have Endeavor bringing in Chisake, as Chisake begins to chastise the heroes for what they have done, but DEKU actually does something very shocking. And that is that DEKU makes a promise to Chisake that if he's willing to put the same feelings towards his boss and direct them towards Eri, then he would uphold the deal that Lady Nagant promised. Which is very important because even though Chisake is something that has harmed someone that DEKU has grown to care about, he realizes that Chisake still has a chance to change and become someone better, so he's allowing this to be the chance that Chisake needs to actually become a better person. And from that moment, the episode pretty much ends where it is very symbolic of DEKU going from the light into the darkness, and that he's about to go crazy as we get the last shot of his eyes being very manic and crazy like. But yeah, this is pretty much my breakdown for this episode of My Hero Academia. I thought that this episode was amazing. One of the best episodes that we've gotten, at least in this part, because it covers very enjoyable chapters of this arc. It had amazing animation and direction, and covers one of the fan favorite characters of this entire series. So what more can I say about this episode besides the fact that it was amazing? But this is all I really have to say for my breakdown for My Hero Academia. So let me ask you, what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? What did you enjoy about this episode most? I would love to hear more about it. And before you go, let me ask you to just subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more breakdowns of the My Hero Academia Season 6 anime, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I upload all of this new and interesting anime content. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!